Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Musa Wanders the Wilderness. This episode is titled Sinai, a place where the two seas meet. So right now, we are in Dahab, on the eastern side, the southeastern side of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. Behind me, you'll see the Gulf of Aqaba, which is a branch of the Red Sea, which itself is connected to the Indian Ocean. So you might be asking, what am I saying? Sinai, a place where the two seas meet. Well, first, we could say that it is possible that the story from Surah Al-Kahf about the verdant one, Khidr alayhi salam, traveling with Musa and his assistant, who most scholars believe to be Yusha alayhi salam. So that it may have taken place here. If the Sinai Peninsula was the place of the historical crossing of the Red Sea and the wandering in the wilderness, at least partially, for Bani Israel, led by Musa alayhi salam. But there are deeper levels or deeper ways of thinking about where the two seas meet. To me, as a revert, this conceptualization of the two seas meeting is one of the most interesting thinking tools that the Quran provides. And the Quran provides many thinking tools that are overlooked by outsiders and insiders within the tradition. So what is a place where the two seas meet? So we've got two seas, which they suggest two different kinds of substances. Typically, people will think about fresh water and salt water, as in Bahrain, where there is some freshwater springs that bubble up in the sea in that region. Now, this is on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, if I'm correct, like directly behind me is the Arabian Peninsula, and so this is the kingdom of the Sauds behind me, and off to my right, you will see headed up toward further north, we have Jordan. We've also got the Palestinian territories and Israel. Now this is the southeastern part of the Sinai Peninsula. So let's just say that let's not think about the historicity of whether Sinai is the actual location of the wanderings. We'll discuss that in another video shortly, inshallah. But let's discuss the two seas meeting. I really like borderlands. Borderlands are places of convergence, connection, and conflict. And two seas meeting, this is a place of confluence. And confluences in many societies and in many religions, confluences are considered to be sacred locations. Think about South Asia. In South Asia, there are many traditions within the Shaivite tradition, within the Vaishnavite tradition, where confluences of rivers are considered to be very sacred places. They're high energy places for spiritual energy. We find this in the broader Indo-European and Indo-Irani tradition, as far as I'm aware. So this is very interesting because those are places where two seas of fresh water meet. We can think about seas all around us. We typically think a sea is a saltwater body is a body of salt water, a saline body of water that's very large, and seas connect to oceans. But we can think about it in other ways as well, as I've discussed in other videos. We could think about the atmosphere around us as a sea of oxygen and water. So there is water all around us. We are walking in an ocean of air and breathing it in. So your very body is the place where two seas meet, the inner and the outer. It is the place where oxygen and carbon dioxide meet, but they do not merge. So they're evidently different. And so we're bringing through the nostrils. This is the place where the two seas meet. So the stone where the sage sits would be the place of bone and flesh from a certain perspective. So this is a way of thinking symbolically and literally at the same time. Think about this is an expansive way of thinking literally. I'm a holistic thinker, and I encourage you to think holistically from as many angles as possible, because to think in a purely literal way, first off, most people are not true literalists. Secondly, when we think pure in a literal manner, it's an impoverished way of thinking, and it cuts us off from our full, complete humanity, and it cuts off our cognition. We are intuitive, rational beings. And we need to have full access to the full range of data, and to process that in many ways, to process that through our reason, through logic, through the heart, through intuition. So we're thinking about where the two seas meet. All right, so I mentioned that we could view the air, the atmosphere around us as an ocean of air and water, where two seas are meeting, of air, oxygen and water. Now, obviously, you find that within an ocean of salt water or of freshwater. Freshwater, I would argue that rivers, you could consider them to be seas. They're moving, these streams are seas coming from glaciers, also from the atmosphere, from rainfall, and coming down from the high grounds toward the low, and they're headed toward the sea ultimately. Seas also well up from under the earth. Like the books of Enoch speak about the fountains under the earth in the biblical materials as well. So there are vast freshwater seas within the earth and all around us. And then we have saltwater seas all around us. Your body is a sea of saline salt water, like the saline living water, I should say. Your blood is salty if you taste it. So it's salt water, and yet you contain fresh water, and we need fresh water to survive. If we tried to live off of salt water, we would die. We would dehydrate, get sick, and die. We need fresh water every day, a substantial amount, in fact. When we are in the womb, we are in a saline environment. The womb is a sea within a sea. All right? When it comes to freshwater, we also think of freshwater, some lakes as being seas. Like, so for instance, Lake Baikal in Siberia, a holy lake out, in the Mongolian region that's now in Russian territories. That is a freshwater body. The Great Lakes in North America, the Great Lakes within the continent of Africa, that region, including Lake Malawi, Lake Victoria, Lake Albert, etc. These are freshwater lakes that by many people, they would consider them to be seas. They're so vast, but they're freshwater seas. The same, we find many different places, freshwater bodies that are giant lakes called seas. So now we get down to other ways of thinking about this. Where we are in the Sinai Peninsula is considered to be Asia. And yet it's part of a country that is predominantly within Africa. Now, the reality is, from my understanding, is when we think about plate tectonics, Sinai, it is actually mostly on the African plates. So right now, I'm standing in Africa, but in fact, the eastern part of Sinai is where the Arabian plate meets the African plate. So it's two seas meeting, two seas of soil. All right, so we want to think about two seas of soil meeting. Africa meets Asia with plate tectonics. So where the two seas meet, so Musa and Yusha, alayhum salam, may have met the verdant one, the sage that sits at where the two seas meet. They may have met him in this area, perhaps, where the two plates meet. And this would be known to Allah, but it would not necessarily be known to humans, even though they might be enlightened on certain levels. They may not have known about plate tectonics, likely not. They did not possess vast scientific knowledge, although they were very knowledgeable for their times. Anyway, so this is where Africa and Asia meet, where two seas of soil meet. And the plates, also the cultures of Asia and Africa are mixing and mingling here, because the Sinai Peninsula, which is wedge-shaped, it is considered to be a land bridge between Africa and Eurasia, because Asia, in fact, is not a separate continent from my understanding. Europe and Asia are actually one. When you hear people say that Europe is separated from Asia by the Ural Mountains and the Caucasus Mountains, and at Istanbul. This is a very strange conceptualization, because by this kind of logic, in North America, one side of the Rocky Mountains would be Western America and the other side would be Eastern America. If you start analyzing it from multiple angles holistically, then it'll short circuit, it'll disprove the logic of it. So whereas Eurasia is one continent and one plate as far as I'm aware, like you can put in the comments your thoughts on the matter, your knowledge of the matter. It's fascinating to me. But Europe is a continent in the sense of being a distinct ethno-linguistic cultural region historically. And this is very sophisticated, of course, and it's very similar in thinking about South Asia as a place of diverse groups of ethnic groups and languages and cultures and religions. There are a lot of similarities, in fact, even in ancient migration. So I'm putting out a lot of information for us to think with, because we need to be wide-ranging, expansive thinkers. We need to think with all of our tools, with all of our skill sets, with our minds, with our reason and our logic, with our hearts, with our intuition. So Sinai is a place where the two seas meet. Asia and Africa, the African and the Arabian plate, because that also leads to the issue of the Arabian Peninsula being considered a subcontinent, similar to the way we think about the Indian subcontinent. Most people don't say, that Arabia is a subcontinent, but if we're thinking in terms of plate tectonics, then it would be. And it does have a number of things, very fascinating things related to this that we can discuss in other videos. But and let me know if you would like me to discuss these kind of issues and do more research along these lines. But I like to think about the place where the two seas meet as places of continuity, places of connection, places of confluence. Confluences are very, very important for humanity. Places where our languages meet, where our cultures meet, and Allah created us in different colors, different tribes, different languages, so that we would know one another. And how do we know one another? We know one another through comparison and contrast. Comparison and contrast are very important for thinking, and for thinking well. And so I want us to just consider that Sinai is a place where the two seas meet, and we can think about this in terms of the story from Surah Al-Kahf. We can think about this in terms of geology and geography. We can think about these in this place in terms as a place of two seas meeting in terms of sociology and history. So we need to think holistically about this. And I love to think about and to consider where two seas meet. Because a man and a woman coming together as husband and wife, that is a place where two seas meet. A child that is born from two loving partners, from a husband and a wife, is a place where two seas meet, a place of convergence, a place of confluence, a place of connection, a place of continuity, a place of beauty, excellence, and upliftment, a place of expansion and enlightenment. So consider these things, and I would love to hear what you think about this topic and this way of considering the story of Musa alayhi salam, because Musa is a very fascinating and important character, not just in the world religions, but in terms of humanity and who we are as humans. So let's think a little bit more about this amazing man, this prophet, this messenger. May peace be upon him and all of the messengers and prophets, all the way back across space and time. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.